Well, here we are, people. Hooray! This is Let's Talk Enablement. I am Jonathan Kvarfordt, the series lead for today, even though the two ladies here could easily lead this, but I'm very grateful they're able to join me on this, which is phenomenal. I just wanted to quickly just go over what we'll be talking about in the next couple of sessions, and then do an intro for these two wonderful presenters with me, which is amazing. So today and in April and May, we'll be talking about sales coaching, kind of diving into some of the details. We'll kind of review this at the end, make sure you guys know what to plan on. But I want to get to the exciting stuff, which is our presenters with me, which is going to be great. I'm going to start with Jocelle Sarenpa, who is the Director of Sales Enablement at Field Nation. So she was in sales for 8 years and then shifted to enablement in 2016-ish, I think, where she led enablement teams for companies like Sovos, Class, and presently, obviously, Field Nation. She is an SEC ambassador and named top enablement ones to watch in 2023. And her love language is compelling conversations, and I'm hoping we'll do the best we can to fulfill that need today, which is great. Welcome, Jocelle. Anything you want to add?
Thank you. Here's a fun fact that enablers love. I have been in sales since I was 17 years old. It's pretty rare. I think it's 5% of enablers start their career in sales or make that transition from being a direct seller, but 17-year-old high school student with a sales quota, that's the life. So I've definitely been in the seller's shoes.
I love it. So curious. I'm just curious. What did you sell when you were 17?
Diamonds.
Diamonds. Wow, that's legit.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a fun one. We can maybe get into some 4Cs and some diamond stuff as we go along.
You know what's random? I used to be a trainer for people who sold diamonds, which is funny. But anyways, we'll get another topic there. Welcome, Jocelle. You're awesome. We're definitely getting into that. All right, Kira Pollard-Lipkis is the Senior Director of Sales Enablement of Talent Solutions at LinkedIn. So she started, I believe, in marketing content like a while ago. And then when joining LinkedIn as an IC before building the enablement team for LinkedIn Learning Solutions, and for the last 2 years, has led LinkedIn Talent Solutions, which is on pace to cross 8 billion, which is phenomenal. She's also an ICF certified coach and has a soft spot for coaching women in leadership. Kira, welcome. Thank you much. Anything you want to add?
Thank you. Let's see here. I guess I'll just tack on to Jocelle. I also was a seller before moving into enablement at LinkedIn most recently, but my first job was selling surfboards and skateboards in San Diego, where I grew up.
That's amazing. I love it. Do you surf or skate?
Not anymore. No, I think I dabbled, as a kid through high school, but certainly not these days. I don't know how good either of those. I took my first skiing lesson.
Well, hey, that works. That's cool. It's a little different, but I love it. Skiing is a blast. But so is
when you move from New York to Denver, I feel like
you kind of have to
learn how to snowboard.
That's amazing. Well, welcome, Kira. Thanks so much for being here with us. My name is Jonathan Kvarfordt. My last name looks weird. It's not that bad. Some people call me Coach K specifically because my last name's hard to say. I am a revenue enablement leader. I may or may not be consulting and or looking for another position here shortly, which would be great. But I also am the author of the Sales Coaching Mastery, which is why they asked me to lead this lovely series. Have my MBA in leadership and marketing. I also was selling tires and wheels and mechanic stuff when I was 15. So I totally get where you guys are coming from. And I really enjoyed the enablement space. Been in it for the last 12 years in different places, from billion-dollar companies to startups, and love everything and anything about enablement, and especially about sales coaching. So let's get rock and rolling. Today, we're going to handle this a little bit differently. I'm not going to be so much as a facilitator as much as a participant / kind of spurrer of questions. So we'll kind of get the conversation going, and we're just going to let it roll and see how things go. So first off, just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'd love to hear your guys' definition of sales coaching. So Jocelle, you mind starting out? Tell me what you think and give us a foundational piece of what sales coaching is for you.
This topic has been in the ether. It's been around, it's been swirling around and really coming to light more so now than I think ever before. And this is potentially because we've just exited this phase of education and self-exploration when it comes to, do I even want to be doing the job that I'm in anymore? And I really mean that for people who are in the selling profession, who are entering in the sales profession, and really just the change in market conditions, the change in the world, people's priorities shifting, and really taking a closer look into what it is that you would like to accomplish. I think sales coaching and coaching in general just speaks to that so much, is helping people achieve their goals, whatever their outcome, objective, their goal is, helping them in a empathetic and considerate way to get from where they are today and where they're trying to get to. And there's a lot that goes into that. So it sounds simple, but it is not always super easy. And I'm sure we'll get into that today.
Yeah.
But I'd say step one is really just that self-awareness piece that we'll dig into.
Love it. Kira, you're up. I want to hear it.
Beautiful. Well, you mentioned earlier, Jonathan, I have this like huge passion for coaching. I think it started a couple of years ago when I decided to go become a certified coach, which at the time I was like, I just keep hearing about coaching, right? It was, to your point, Jocelle, it's like the word that's like just swirling in the ether constantly. And I'm like, if I'm going to enable people on how to be a great coach, I should probably learn how to be a great coach. So I went through that process, and I think that it's actually a good place to start is to differentiate between sales coaching and just coaching more broadly. And I think, to pick up on what Jocelle was saying, like at the core, coaching is coaching, and coaching is how do you empower people, build their confidence, build their skills, allow them to achieve their goals and keep them accountable. So I think like whether it's coaching in any space or sales coaching, like at the core, that's really the heart of what it is. However, for anybody who's ever gone through coaching training or has been certified through ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, what you'll know is technically you don't need subject matter expertise to be a coach. And in fact, it can actually be beneficial to not have subject matter expertise to be a great coach. I think that that's where we pivot a little bit when we talk about sales coaching, right? I think to be an excellent sales coach, you actually do need expertise within sales. I think the best sales coaches are the ones that actually have been in either a sales person's shoes, a sales manager, or leader's shoes for a long time. And you start with the end goal in mind and work backwards. And then the last thing I'll say is I think that great sales coaching is very individualized, right? Not every person needs the same coaching on the same things. And so I think great sales coaches like really deeply understand the makeup of their team and what each person really needs to focus on in order to achieve their individual goals.
I love both those answers. I'm going to add to both because in my experience, I would agree with you that a lot of times sales coaching is unique because you do need a little bit more experience with it, because other ways, you won't be able to fulfill the need they're having because you don't know exactly what the experience is. So I'd love to hear anyone else's in the who's listening to their opinions or thoughts. And by the way, anyone who's listening, if you have any questions as we go, please post them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you all and participate with us. It would be great. My definition would be kind of adding on to what you both said is, for me, it's about drawing out or unleashing someone else's greatness that's already inside of them in a way that creates measurable results and builds their confidence, both inner change and external change. So if I can do that with coaching, then I've succeeded. So now I'm curious, and this is just random, and I know we haven't actually had this question prepped, but this is my honest, curious thought is, in your experience with coaching, I love to start with why. Why do you like sales coaching specifically? What has happened to make you passionate about it?
Oh, I would say for me, it's not unusual. This is not an unusual story to most people who find themselves in a coaching capacity. Is the managers, the mentors that I've had along my sales and career journey, who really helped shape me and invested that time and energy to help me become better, genuinely care and show me a path, even when I maybe wasn't ready to hear it, bringing me along, showing me the way, having that, empathy and support. That is what really made my career. And to be able to do that for someone else, that's huge. That is, when people talk about what's your why, what's your purpose, what's your key purpose, it really took me a long time to pin it down, my personal why. Why do I do what it is that I do every day. And in the sales profession, as a salesperson, there was a lot of fulfillment in helping prospects, customers, clients achieve their goals, get something implemented for their company, something that they were struggling with, that they had a lot of pain around, and I was there to help them be the hero and make them look good. But that wasn't quite the right level of fulfillment. So really, my why now is my purpose, why I do what I do, is to help others achieve more than they ever thought they could. And the way I do that is through sales enablement and through different mentorship groups and things like that. But the enablement community is so special, and the role itself is really special, and coaching is at the heart of all of that. So
I love
that
it.
might have been a kind of a introspective why around it, but
It's good. I love it.
It's always so great following Jocelle. She like just drops all the wisdom, and I can just add on to it. I think perhaps similarly, like the reason why I love sales coaching is the same reason I love sales enablement. I think most people are in this profession because they have a passion to help others be successful, right? Like I think that we could all go into sales and crush a quota, but the reason why we do this work is because we get some sort of personal fulfillment out of seeing other people accomplish their goals. And so that's why I'm in enablement more broadly. But then when you think about, well, how can you help each individual like step into the best version of themselves and do things that they didn't think were possible for them to do, and for them to break down their limiting beliefs, like that's the power of coaching and where coaching comes in. And I think that, I don't know, coaching is one of those things where, because it's kind of a buzzword these days, like everyone knows that they should either be a good coach or that it's an important skill to develop. But it's one of those things that I kind of believe you don't really understand the power of it until you experience it yourself. And so similarly, when I reflect on my career, I think about the best leaders that I've ever worked for. And they're the ones that have provided me with coaching, right? Like anyone can tell you what to do and show you what to do. And if you're a relatively smart and confident human being, which we all hire many of, like you can kind of, follow the model and follow the lead. But actually being coached and figuring out your own path and figuring out how to accomplish what you want to accomplish and then do it is something that's really special. And so like once you've experienced that, I think it's, I don't know, you get the itch.
Totally.
So at least it happened for me.
There's definitely a vibe there. Like, oh, I got to do that again. That's fun. For me, the same thing for me. The why for me is like you, Carrie. I came from a life coaching space. So I was in life coaching for a long time as an ICF person and other certifications. And I always call enablement the life coach of companies, because you usually become that. But for me, the why is if I can impact someone's life so that literally so they either feel more confident or actually make more money or something, like there's nothing more exciting for me than taking a person who was, as an example, at my company a couple of times ago, there was this a person who came in from an SDR role into an AE and was struggling, and coached them for 6 to 9 months. They went from a bottom performer to a top performer. And I can't take all credit for that, because you have to have someone who's moldable and coachable and willing to work. And she did 90% of it. But having a impact in there or an influence on it, to me, is what gets exciting and is fulfilling for me. So I love that. All right. So curious. So I'm going to kind of go backwards a little bit. So we're going to talk about today is like culture, building a foundation, all that kind of stuff. Jocelle, you brought up in our pre-meeting stuff that you want to talk about something before you get someone to the company, which is hiring and recruiting and that kind of stuff. So I'd love to hear, like, if we're going to build a culture or foundation of coaching, what should be happening in the recruiting hiring stage to, make that more possible?
It's interesting because oftentimes as enablers, whether you are coming into a new role, switching teams, reemployment, finding a new job, you inherit a sales team. And we'll talk about that, but that's not what, this is not exactly what we'll be talking about right now, which is how, if you have a say as an enabler, which I deeply believe as an enablement professional who works with the sales team or any revenue team, whether that's CS, AMs, whoever you work with, that you are a partner with those leaders to build out what is the job description, what are the requirements, what are the key attributes that make someone successful, so that you can You can build the profile for what you're searching for. You can recruit based on that criteria, and you can interview based on that criteria as well. So really identifying that, and that comes with like the other side of awareness. So the self-awareness for the individual and coaching, but also how can we define what it is that makes a person successful in this role without being so limiting that we're exclusive and we don't get any great talent or, a diversity of backgrounds and thought when building a team. But that is absolutely, I champion. If you are in enablement and you are not involved with any of the hiring decisions for your sellers, for your sales team, I encourage you to at least have those conversations with your sales leaders or your business partners to say, this is the data and information based on our top performers, based on what makes a person successful that we need to be looking for in everything from the job description to where we're posting this information to the actual interview process. And that can be anything from, typically in a sales interview, you'll have that final step, which is the mock presentation. And sometimes that's your own product, sometimes it's a persuasive presentation. There's something that a sales rep does at the very end. And one way to identify coachability and key attributes that you're looking for is really in that feedback section when you're giving key feedback, both positives and critiques for the potential candidate, and seeing how they react and respond to that feedback. And that's a very clear indication when under stressful circumstance, when there's high stakes, potential of a new job, there's money on the line, there's all this attachment emotionally and with other elements factored in as well, that how they handle the feedback that we give them, all with the positive intent of we want to help you and see you get better. How do they handle that? Are they defensive? Do they get angry? Do they make excuses? And on the flip side, are they open to hearing more? Do they ask another question? If you say something like, during your presentation, we noticed that you skipped right over an agenda walkthrough. Is that because you assumed that what we were doing, or help us understand why you did that? And they're like, I had no idea I did that. I planned it. I rushed through it. Tell me more. When could I have done that? If they're hungry and eager to ask more questions, to get more feedback, to really help steer and grow themselves, I think that is a great, great way to incorporate that question of, is this person, to what degree is this person coachable in the candidacy process?
I love that. So you said coachability obviously is one. I'm just curious, for you at Field Nation, what are the top 3 things you guys looking for now in your recruit, besides coachability?
So adaptability is huge, especially, we're an older startup. We're about 15 years. We just had our 15-year anniversary, our birthday. So we're an older startup. We're a pretty small team at this point. I think we're about 65 of us in the revenue engine, I would call it. And I'd say beyond coachability, adaptability is huge. Adaptability, flexibility, willingness to be open to change, that's huge. And another one is just in sales in general, and this is not unique to Field Nation, but resilience is huge. And it's interesting how language is such a limiting thing to describe something much bigger. But what is resilience? Resilience could be optimism. Resilience is grit. Resilience is perseverance. It's accountability, responsibility. There's so much that goes into resilience that there's all these different ways to define it and to identify what those, how you can find out if someone is resilient and how they push through.
I love it. Perfect. The perfect answer. Kira, I'm going to shift to you. We're quick because Jocelle did obviously an amazing job. But I know you have a unique perspective being at LinkedIn. Yeah. So tell me your thoughts as far as like recruiting and finding that coachability and creating a culture.
Yeah. Great. I think so. At LinkedIn, we have something that we call career performance profiles, or CPPs. We love a good acronym at LinkedIn. I don't know about you guys. And CPPs are like, in short, they're just what is the definition of what great looks like for each specific role. So like I have them for my team in enablement, sales people have them for their teams. They look different level by level. We obviously expect different things from our most senior sellers versus our entry level SMB sellers. But we have a really heavy hand partnering with HR and sales leaders in designing what those career performance profiles look like. So it starts, and of course those inform the interview process, right? Because you take what great looks like in the role and then you try to hire for that. So couldn't agree more with Jocelle. Get involved if you're not already. It's a really great opportunity to like hook your future self up for success by making sure that you're bringing in the right type of talent from day one. I think Marshall Goldsmith has a framework for looking for coachability that I personally really love. And so he believes that there's like 3 main criteria for somebody who's coachable. And it's courage, humility, and discipline. So the courage part is like, can this person step out of their comfort zone and try new things, right? Because that's what it means to be coachable, right? You can't just keep doing what you've always done. What got you here won't get you there. You have to actually like really push beyond your boundaries to be willing to do things differently to see if they work. The second is humility. So how much can this person own their mistakes and learn from their mistakes, right? And like not be egocentric. Like I think that people who are humble are really team oriented versus self-oriented. And I think that's really important to look for in hiring for salespeople. And then the last one is discipline. So like, do they have what it takes to actually make the change stick, right? Because anybody can like try something different once, but like, do they have what it takes to like keep going when maybe it doesn't work out perfectly the first time? And so I do think you can design an interview process to test for like each of those 3 things. I think there's questions that you can ask that at least give you a good pulse check on those 3 areas. And then the last thing I'd say is I actually use the interview process itself to test if somebody's coachable, similar to what Jocelle said. Yeah, there's that capstone moment. I don't know if anyone else had to sell a pen. Like, I don't know. I feel like they always made you sell a pen. I don't know if people still do that. But for me, like, I like to give feedback real time at the end of an interview process, right? Like, I don't believe in like the holding a poker face, like letting the candidate wonder like how they did or what's in your brain. I typically try to give like some real quick, like, here's what you did really well. Here's some of the things that I think you can improve on and focus for next time. And I tell that to the person who's doing the next interview, right? And then I ask them, how did that person actually implement the feedback that I gave them in their following and subsequent interview? And I think that like coachable people take the feedback to heart and they adapt quickly. Whereas people that are less coachable, like tend to like stick in their patterns. They're pretty habitual. So I use like the interview process as an experience to test for
I love that. The conversation of like what you look for and then what you look for that won't work, you know, the other side of it. I'm just curious, what would you all say as far as like, what are the things you would look at and go, that's the sign that might not be a right fit for coachability?
Somebody who is really resistant to feedback, first and foremost. Like when you deliver feedback in an interview process, I think the way in which somebody like hears you and maybe asks a clarifying question is a really big indicator. I think that defensiveness is like one of those like really scary signs, honestly, to watch out for. So somebody who's like going to defend themselves. The other thing that I watch for is when I ask questions, I may be helpful context. I do lead a team of leaders, so most often when I'm interviewing for people leadership, but how often do people use I versus we when they're speaking? Like I think really great people leaders and coaches like work through their teams. And I think that, you know, it's like one of those subtle things that you can listen for, which I think is a telling sign of like, is this person somebody who's like in it for themselves and in it to make themselves look good, or are they in it for other people? So it's just like a minor thing that I like always keep my ears open for in the interview process.
Hi, puppy. It's okay, puppy joined us. It's all right. So I love these answers. For me, the only thing I'd add in, because both yours are phenomenal. I don't have much to add except for I look for those emotional intelligence type triggers, because usually I find that emotional intelligence and coachability kind of go hand in hand. And just seeing that ability to receive, like you said, information or feedback in a way that they don't, you know, don't get upset with, or you can see them get like, oh, defensive. But at the same time, I know that the person giving the feedback needs to be aware of like how they give it to make sure they're not doing it in a way that makes someone feel defensive, you know. So there's kind of a both sides thing with that too. But I know you two ladies are pros, and so you're delivering it perfectly, which is great. All right, so I know we have Francis responded back. If anyone's listening, I am curious how many salespeople or revenue team members, how many do you support? Because I want to make sure we can speak to your size of teams, and I'd love to hear what you guys are just supporting right now. Let's shift a little bit, if that's okay, and now go to the next foundation piece, which is creating a coaching culture. So let's assume that people listening are anyone from teams of 10 all the way up to hundreds of people. And it could be anywhere across the board. And let's just say they walked into a role. Hi, Gail. They walked into a role where they didn't have a choice in the recruiting process. So the team is like mixed of some people who like coaching and other people who don't like it. How do you shift the mindset from coaching's a thing that we talk about but never actually do to something that's celebrated and encouraged and looked forward to? How do you do that? What you got, smiley face on the whiteboard? Give it to me.
Do you want to go first? Yeah.
This is huge. Like this could be its whole own episode, is answering this very specific question. But the what I found really works is it can't just be this huge, highly punitive, massive frameworks to roll out this, we're now going to start coaching, because that is going to be met with either a lot of resistance or people not being interested at all, or the ones that are already doing coaching and appreciate and enjoy it will be like, yeah, we already do that. We're good. For me, it's something starting very, very small. And even if that's your one-on-one conversations to your team meeting, to just observing how the team does peer-to-peer coaching, observing the manager and how they work with all of their reps, not just their favorite reps, because sales managers have favorites. That's how it goes. It's about understanding where they're at and meeting them where they are at. And it's all about starting small. It's really about starting small. And as enablers, it's really hard to do that, to say, just try something little at first. Maybe you want to just incorporate a peer-to-peer coaching. Maybe you want to just work with one or two managers to say, I've noticed that you're really hands-on with coaching. Help me understand where that comes from. Would you be willing to build something for me based on your methods that already work? I think that just pairing up with your sales leaders will definitely help. But yeah, start small.
Love it. Kira, your dog's going to let you speak? Are you okay?
I think so. I mean, we'll see how long they last, honestly. It depends on if anybody else rings my doorbell, to be honest. That's the indicator if they will cooperate or not. I can't tame the beast. Let's see here. Okay, so for context, I lead a team of about 50 enablement professionals, and we support a team of about 5,000-ish sellers within LinkedIn, just in the talent solutions sector. But the advice I have for building a coaching culture would apply if you were a team of one enabling a sales group of 8. So I think the principles hold regardless of size. And so I have a couple. The first is actually educate people on what coaching is. There are a lot of managers out there who think they are coaching and they are not.
Yes.
They are teaching. and that's fine. But I genuinely, not to be cheeky, but there's just so many people that if you were to ask them, hey, do you coach your team? They say yes. And if you go ask their team, are you being coached? They say no. And this is really timely. We are scaling a massive sales coaching program within my organization right now. So it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. So one is the education. Do they know what it is? Can they differentiate coaching, teaching, mentoring, know when to step into each of those roles? Because as a manager, you do need to have all those abilities, but you also need to know that they're not the same. Step 2 is to build the skills. So once they know what it is, how do you actually invest in their ability to do it? And I think there's some tools and tricks that can be really effective. So the first is a waterfall approach, which I am a really big fan of for any enablement program, coaching or otherwise, which is you won't fail if you start at the top and work your way down. And I think that is never more important than it is with a coaching program or trying to build a culture of coaching. And it's because if you just go straight to a frontline manager level and invest in their coaching skills, it will work somewhat. But if they aren't being coached by their managers, it will fizzle out, I promise you. And so how do you make sure that every single level of leadership shares the same goal of creating this culture? That's super important, right? Like, and do they really mean it? Not just like, are they saying that they want to because they know that they should, but like, do they really, really, truly believe it and understand what that looks like and what it will take? So start at the top, waterfall approach, make it simple and pragmatic. Like, I think a lot of coaching curriculum is very theoretical. Like, make it practical. Give them like a really simple coaching framework. There's a million of them. I would argue it doesn't matter which one you choose, just choose one. Like we use Grow, if you're familiar with that, but there's, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's like something that is a shared language that the coaches within your organization can have. And then I'll end with, like, I use that word really intentionally. I think it starts with like sales managers not seeing themselves as sales managers, but actually seeing themselves as sales coaches. Like, we've toyed around it. Do we change the role title? Like, do we post jobs for sales coaches instead of sales managers at LinkedIn? Like, that's something that we're discussing right now, because I think coaching starts with the mindset. And like and going back to our hiring question, let's say you were to post a job with like the title being sales coach versus sales manager. Like, I'd be willing to venture that you'd actually draw in a different type of candidate.
From the very start.
Awesome.
I love that. So curious, since you're rolling out a massive org, you just talked about you're just right in the middle of it. You're following all these steps. Are there things that you would suggest that have gotten in your way of doing this? You'd say, hey, watch out for this, or be aware of this type of situation?
Yes, for sure. I mean, far from perfect, definitely. I think there's a few things. I'll say a few things are going well and a few things that I think like are lessons good that are learned, that if I were to like advise somebody else on doing this differently, I would give them. I think that the biggest challenge is like no stranger to anyone ever in enablement, regardless of what you're focusing on. It's competing priorities. Like, put simply, we're a rapidly scaling business. Our products are changing pretty quickly. There's always something that the seller has to learn and the seller has to know. And so how can you make sure that this is like seen as the thing that enables other things is really, really critical. And I think that that's been something that we've done effectively, but it wasn't easy, is to shift the mindset of like, this is yet another thing on the list that I have to do, to this is the thing on the list that will allow me to do all the other things on my list really, really well. And I think that, like I said, that was hard at first until you get people in the door. Like, again, it's like one of those things that until you experience coaching, you don't really understand the power of it, I think. And so like, how do you get those people to like be bought in enough to actually engage with it themselves? And then they're like, okay, I get it. Like, once they've experienced it and their manager is role modeling it to them, they're like, okay, I get it. This isn't like one of those things that's just taking time out of my day. It's one of those things that's taking time out of my day to give me so much more time back. And like, I always, maybe I shouldn't say this, but like one of the selling points I use is like, the best thing about coaching is that you get to be lazy. Like, who doesn't want to like spend a little bit less time like solving other people's problems, right? Like, I think as leaders, we put so much pressure on ourselves to like be the person that has the answers and be the person that like solves the problem. And as a coach, that mindset has to go out the window, right? Like, as a coach, you're like, this person has the answers already. I just have to push them so that they actually find those within themselves. And I think that like there's some beauty in that. It allows you to like not work so hard, and it allows you to get time back, which I think is really, really great. So what's the wisdom for people? Like, how can you speak their language and like pull them in with things that they care about? And like, what do all people care about? Like, saving time, making other people and their teams hit their quotas earlier and more successfully. And like, once you get people to believe that this is the critical skill that will allow them to accomplish those things quicker, then you have them. So I think it's like, what's going well, really clear what's in it for me up front, draw people into the room. I would say what's not going well is we didn't use my own advice here. We did not follow the waterfall approach for this like we do for a lot of other programs. So we have our most senior leaders going through this at the same time as our frontline managers. So everyone's involved, which is great. But I do believe that a cascade approach is more effective. I've done it both ways. One always works better. It takes more time. There's, like anything, there's trade-offs. But for programs that you really, really care about, and for me, like this is one I really, really care about, I think it's a trade-off worth making. So that's advice I'd give to somebody else.
I love it. You okay if I add a couple things? We're going to jump to some questions. Is that all right? So you both sparked something for me, which I thought was interesting. So Jocelle, you talked about how you start with little instead of going huge bites. It reminded me of my wife is a language teacher, and she has a principle she uses called the effective filter concept, which is all about making sure someone feels safe and using small steps as opposed to large steps to get them to go places. And so, and to your point, Kira, it's like the more you're able to take those and to actually apply it to the entire team and have those steps in a way that they can actually be successful, not just theoretically saying, this is what you should do in theory in coaching, but this is how you actually do it. And let me show you, is how people can accomplish it. Because otherwise you say, well, we're going to coach. Everyone defines it differently. They don't define the experience the same, or they take too much and they don't do the basics, which is where the impact comes in, and then like something you said too, Kira, was that defining what it is versus what it's not. Like a lot of times people think it's some sort of consulting or it's some form of counseling, because that's all people really have experienced. They've never experienced a good coach. Where for me, the best coaches for me, like you said, ask thoughtful questions or use my language in a way that makes me think about it differently or helps draw out of me what I need to have. And I'm the one giving the answer, but they guide me and facilitate me through that discovery process, and that takes, it is lazy, but it takes some skill. Like it's not exactly the easiest thing, but I agree with you. It is the lazier side. Okay. So question for you, or not for you guys, for all of us, I should say, but Daniel said, wonder if you have any thoughts on some common mistakes that sales coaches make and how they can avoid them.
Okay. I love this one because there's one that we all see it. We all see it. We all know what it looks like, but to confront it and talk about it is a little bit challenging. And here's what it is. You're in a coaching session, perhaps small groups with the manager, and the manager is not into it. They're not actively listening to what's going on. They're distracted. Maybe it's my bad. I scheduled it during quarter end. All the reasons, priorities again, right? Where you can just tell that they're not in the right mindset, the right headspace to give critical feedback that's aligned to what the person is trying to accomplish. And therefore it's like, why are you even here? Why are we doing this now? Step aside or, get your head in the game. But it's, unless you have that close relationship with the coach, with the person that is potentially sales leader, whomever it is, unless you have that close relationship to be like, hey, can we focus in on this? Or like, I know you're having a lot on your plate right now. Do you want me to step in and help you out with this? There's, different ways to be more considerate of what's going on. But I'd say acknowledging when you yourself as a coach are not in the right headspace and understanding how to get yourself out of it, or to pivot and say, I'm sorry, I want to help, but I just can't right now because of priority or something else that's going on. And the flip side of that is really that self-awareness of being a coach and saying, I can't right now. I just can't, and I want to do this well, but I just can't right now. So that's one that I'm sure we've all seen. How to proactively get beyond that is just really, first of all, understanding who your coaches are, how you can help enable them, giving them the tools to be successful from the get-go, whether that's a framework and that's practice, enabling them to be great coaches to begin with and having great expectations, but also letting them know we're all humans. We're all human beings. If you are not into it in the moment, if you're not feeling it, if you need extra support, like lean on enablers, lean on us. We're here to help, and lean on your team. People helping people. It's just, it's hard to say that in the world of corporations and how we're supposed to have an image. But I think more and more, it's the human element is important.
Love it. Fantastic. Kira, go ahead. I have a
this is a great
question. Keep going.
Got it. I'll go quick. Daniel, great question. There's a really important person that we haven't talked about yet on this call, which is the coachee. So it takes two to tango. Coaching only works if you have somebody who's skilled and willing and able to coach, and you have somebody who wants to be coached. So I think, like, going back to your last question, Jonathan, like one of the mistakes I think people make or enablers can make is only focusing on the people managers when it comes to coaching. Like, you also got to educate your reps on what does it look like to be coached? What is their responsibility in that? Because the responsibility, the bulk of it honestly lies on the person being coached, not the coach. So I think that a common mistake that I see people make is actually like forgetting that part. And so how are you educating the rep on what their experience, what they should expect their experience to be when they're being coached, and what they should show up with in order to make that go well? So that's like one. And then the other two, lack of trust. Really like similar to a lot of things Jocelle said, but like coaching doesn't work unless there's trust between the two people, plain and simple. And so like you got to put in the work to build that first. And if you haven't, like, skipping that step doesn't go well. So don't skip that step. And then the last is problem solving. It is so easy to default to problem solving, especially if like you're trying to coach somebody on something that you've experienced or been through. You're like, oh my God, I know how to tell them to make this go well. But like really biting your tongue and not going down that road and not solving the problems for them. I think that's like a mistake that a lot of junior coaches make.
I have a quote that just what you said right there just hit it. And I'm rereading, which many of you have probably read this or one of his texts before, Malcolm Gladwell. I'm rereading David and Goliath. What is learned out of necessity is inevitably more powerful than the learning that comes easily. And it's so hard because you want to like tell someone like, if you only did this, you would accomplish your goals, but they have to go through it. And that's part of the learning process.
It's how we form new neural pathways, right? Like if you find your own answer and then follow through on it, you're way more likely to stick with doing it than if somebody else tells you.
Not only that, you're more committed to it. Like if you have someone tell you the answer, like, yeah, I might try, but if you're like, okay, I gotta follow through with this,
Right. It's a totally different sense of accountability if you're the person that came up with the idea,
To add what you ladies already talked about, a couple for me would be, we kind of talked about it before, but a lot of times sales coaches are ex-account executives who are unconsciously competent at doing something, and they assume that they are speaking the other person's language, and they don't. So they have to have the ability to take what they're unconsciously competent about and explain it in a way that makes sense, and to bring out that in the coachee themselves, because I think that gets missed a lot. There's this learning gap where someone's here, the other person's here, and they're speaking in this language, and that person's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and they got to bridge that gap so it makes sense for them.
It's almost like from Kira, your one of your first comments around the Marshall Goldsmith, the courage, humility, and discipline. Yeah. It's the same on both sides. So.
Yeah,
totally.
What was my follow-up question? I was going to ask you this. I can't remember. I'll come back to it. So we'll get back to that one later. I don't know if you've heard the phrase "coach out." So sometimes you have to coach up or coach out. Have you ever had that? And how do you all suggest doing that in a way that is productive?
Oof. Yes. Yes, I have had to do this. And it's interesting because part of it is being proactive and being involved in those early, hiring decisions and interview process. So like, that's my roundabout way of saying, like, got to make sure you're doing that. If you didn't hear me the first time, got to make sure you're a part of it, to help hopefully avoid some of that in the future. But there's inevitable. Sometimes it's someone who comes in, who's got that golden ticket, the referral, who gets kind of fast tracked through the hiring process. Sometimes people's conditions change, their priorities change in life. So therefore, maybe at one point they were really coachable, and now they felt they've achieved whatever it was they were working towards. And now they're no longer in that same coaching headspace where they are open and willing to receive feedback, that they're actively working towards something and accomplishing something, and need that coach to help support them along their journey, because they don't know what that journey is anymore. It's changed. That happens. And coaching out is it's one of those tough things that clearly you have to have the trust there. You have to work with whomever is the manager. Maybe that's you, maybe that's a peer or a sales leader that you're working with. Trust, super big. But I think when a rep, a seller, an employee is finding themselves in a state of all the negative things that we mentioned earlier on non-coachable behaviors, being defensive, making excuses, disinterested, showing disdain or contempt, any of those things, they feel it too. It's not a surprise to them. Likely not a surprise to them. And generally that's reflected in their performance as well. Not always. I've known some really amazing sellers who just like sell huge deals at the beginning of the year and then you don't hear from them until the next fiscal year. They sell another big one and there you go. And they don't have time for coaching or training or anything else in between. It's just they're hunting whales and that's what they do. And good for them because that works. But if it's not a part of your culture, then that's definitely a conversation to have. But I think we're probably varied on this call on what our actual responsibility is for saying, yeah, let's coach out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for people who might not be familiar with like the phrase, it's like when you realize that somebody's no longer coachable and they're not actually improving and moving up, and like when do you need to decide to like potentially evaluate moving them out of an organization? I think that at LinkedIn we talk a lot about compassionate leadership, and like being a compassionate leader is knowing when to like take the pitcher out of the game before they throw out their arm. Like I think that it's a really important skill for any leader to have. And I think this goes back to like coaching doesn't exist in a vacuum. Coaching is a critical leadership skill. It's not the only leadership skill. Great leaders know when they need to teach something to somebody because they've never learned it yet. They don't know it yet. They know when they need to mentor somebody. They know when they need to change to performance management. So like actually one of the things I would advise enablement professionals to do when they're building coaching curriculums is to acknowledge that and address it. Here's signals that you need to look for to know that like coaching is not the answer anymore. Like if you keep coaching, you're just going to bang your head against a wall and you actually need to pivot to like one of these other paths right now. And so like remembering that it doesn't exist in a vacuum and it exists in a broader like leadership skill ecosystem and how to equip people to manage through that effectively, I think is really, really important. And then the other thing I'd say, there's a lot of statistics to evidence to support that if you were to look at a sales org and you have A, B, and C players, it makes most sense to focus most of your energy on that B bucket. It is way easier to move B players to A players than it is to move A players to A plus players or C players to B players. And so not saying that not everybody deserves to be coached. I actually firmly believe that they do. Everybody like deserves a shot at being coached to see if they're coachable and can improve. But just a statistic to offer people if you're trying to figure out like where to start and where to focus, especially if you work in a really large organization. Lots of evidence to support that that's like a really good place to start.
I love it. I'm going to add on a quick little thing that I had an experience once where this guy went on a PIP situation. So I did have trust with him because I coached him with him before. We went on to a PIP. And the very first question I asked him when I got into the session was, I was like, okay, I just need to know something. Are you in or are you out? Because if you're in, I'll work with you as much as I can to help you. If you're out, it's between you and I'm not going to say anything, and I'll help you find something else if that's what we need to do. But I need to know right now, are you in or not? And I've had to have that conversation. Like, I feel like, and this is part of my coaching style, is that I'm a little bit more, I don't know if blunt's the right word, but direct with certain things, because I want to know where someone's at. And I think that that's something that can, both a mistake that can be made is when people beat around the bush too much. Yeah. Or when someone's trying to coach out, really get an idea of where they're at and if they're actually in or not, because that makes a big difference. If you're assuming they're in or not, then you're misaligned. You know, you can't really help them get to the next level because they just don't want to have it. You know, so
great coaches like speak what's like not being said, right? Like the best coaches are the ones that are like, here's the deal. This is what I'm picking up on. I'm just going to say it and let's have a blunt and frank conversation, right? Like great coaches push people and speak the unspoken. So yeah, I think that that's a really great tactic, Jonathan. I'm also quite a blunt.
Yeah. I have,
you have to be in the world of coaching. You have to be, because that's the only real way to make breakthroughs and any real progress is to address the things that may be uncomfortable, the things that they wouldn't necessarily tell a direct manager, or maybe, who knows, it could be anyone's given circumstance, but just to open the door and say, are you in or are you out? Because I can help you either way.
Yeah.
I just need to know choose your own adventure. Which path are you going down? Because I'm going to coach you through one way or the other.
Totally. We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to do a quick thing real fast. So, Frank, you did ask the question about data analytics to measure success of coaching efforts. We're going to be covering that actually next time on the next conversation. Just so you're all aware, the next session is on April 27th, same time, which happens to be my birthday, so it'll be our birthday session, which will be great. And then session 3 is May 31st, again, same time. Next session is about coaching models and technology going along with analytics. And then feedback and asking effective questions is our last session. And I love this topic, and I'm glad we're going to be covering it. So my last question to you ladies, powerhouse rock stars, if I can add, is the following. What is, and you can pick either one, a specific story where you were being coached or you were coaching someone else that shifted how you coach from there for going forward? Either being coached or coaching. I'll give you a second to think about it.
I'll give my own personal experience.
Yeah.
Because there's this like theme in my life, and I'm a enablement team of one. I'm almost my entire 8 years in enablement. I've been this only one team of one. So I have this theme in my life, which is the sense of belonging, of being a lone wolf, being the one person that does the one thing, the one person in the selling diamonds who is also the diamondologist. This weird space that I always find myself in, that's unique to me. And what I realized from very early on is that I had managers who, some of them recognized that I behaved differently, that I had this, lone wolf gets such a negative connotation, but I had this about me that is, I'm not like everyone else. Well, it turns out most people aren't like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And it's not just me. That's not unique to me. That does not make, everyone is special. Everyone is unique. Everyone has preferences in their communication, in the way that they handle their own goal setting. They have different priorities in life. Everyone is different. So when I had managers that genuinely, and coaches, mentors that genuinely understood and wanted to help me get to the thing I was trying to accomplish, that's the best coaches that I've ever had. So coaching coaches, being a coach myself, understanding that I can't coach everybody in the exact same way. You have foundations, principles that you carry on through everything, frameworks, perhaps, if you want to call it. There's that standard kit that you work with, but everyone is unique and special and different. You have to treat them that way.
Love it.
Hard to scale, but I think there's a sweet spot there.
It's a good sweet spot. I like it.
Oh gosh. I vividly remember a moment where I was walking around Bryant Park in New York with one of the sales directors that I was partnered with. And this man was a really brilliant coach in his own right. And without going into all the details, there had been a previous experience from a few years before that where I'd interviewed for a job, I didn't get it, went through a whole bunch of hoops, ended up getting it later, but the process itself was really crappy, to be honest. And it was one of those things that I kind of kept to myself and hadn't really talked about. And we were walking around Bryant Park having a in-person one-on-one. And I was decided I'd open up to him. I was like, I have to tell you about this experience a couple years ago. And that experience is why I worked so hard in my job to prove everyone who didn't think I could do the job well wrong. And I was I told him this whole story, and I expected him to respond with a lot of compassion and empathy and be like, oh my God, I had no idea that you went through that. And good on you for keeping on. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and was like, what is holding on to the story doing for you? How long are you gonna hold on to this? And how is it serving you? And I was like, oh shit, that was the answer I was expecting from him. And it was one of those moments, I think the most important skill in coaching is powerful questions. Full stop. And it was one of those moments where I remember that question was so confronting for me, right? And I really had to like stop and be like, he is so right. Like, what purpose is this serving for me? Like, why am I still like thinking about this from years ago and like trying to like prove people wrong, you know, and like hold on to this grudge. And so I think that lesson for me, and this was a long time ago, but that moment really sticks out for me of like being the recipient of somebody who's like unafraid to just like speak the truth, be direct, ask a powerful question. And like that is something that has stuck with me ever since, and I employ, you know, constantly in my coaching, which is to the point we were talking about earlier. Like, don't be afraid to just say the thing or like challenge the person. Like, it is in service of their growth. It is not to be difficult. And then the other one I would just share briefly is like, you know, sometimes when you get like, coaching isn't solving other people's problems, and part of that is sometimes they come up with an answer that's not the way you would do. So I think like sitting, like biting your tongue and sitting on your hands and not being like, no, that's like, thanks for trying, but like actually, why don't you try this instead? Like, see how it goes, and you know what? You'll be surprised. Like, sometimes people are smarter than you are, and like the answers that they come up with for themselves, to your point, Jocelle, individuals are different, and so like what works for them might not be what would have worked for you, but that's also a really powerful lesson, is like not giving people the answer, not correcting them when they come up with a path that you wouldn't have come up with, and like watching it, having the patience to watch it play out.
I'm gonna add a real quick story, and then we'll finish up for today. But for me, it was similar to yours, Kira, where I had a manager mentor listen to a sales call of mine, and afterwards I was like thinking he was going to tell me how awesome it was, and instead he goes, he's like, "Do you believe in what we do in our product, and do you think it's worth the price, or do you think it's too expensive?" And I'm like, interesting. I don't know why. It's because he heard this non-confident part of me, and we talked about it, had a great conversation around. I didn't really think that it was worth what we're thinking, or it was at that moment it was a product that was selling more than I've ever sold before, so I was uncomfortable talking the price, you know. So then he asked me, and this question I've stuck with, and I asked it in different ways, but he has asked me, what do you need to experience, know, or say, or hear for you to have that confidence? So it's like taking, okay, do you have this? If yes or no, what do you need to hear, say, speak, experience, whatever, to have that so you can actually move forward? That question and then that experience has been the one that both has helped me. And then I use the same thing with other people, like, what do you need to have, feel, experience, whatever, to have that gap be met? And then they can tell you, I need this. Perfect, let's do that. You know, let's hold you accountable to that thing you just talked about, which is phenomenal. All right, it is now time. Ladies, thank you so much for joining on this. This has been awesome. Look forward to April 27th. We'll see you on the next point around. And thank you, Sales Enablement Collective, for having us. Everyone listening in, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye,
having us.
everyone.
Bye.